Hi guys, welcome back to Into Deep, a podcast with me, Alyssa. In this podcast, we go a little too deep into everything feminism, from AI deepfake porn to cyber brothels to virtual sexual assault in video games. And also, I hate Elon Musk. Since the onset of technology, modern technology, namely the internet, it has been misogynistic, obviously. Difficult to deny when even the beginnings of the internet had porn sites as some of the most visited websites. For social media, we all know Facebook started as a way for male students to rank female students or something. I don't know. But regardless, everything on the internet had some weird misogynistic origin. Recently, AI has been criticized for its water usage, environmental degradation, and depletion of our critical thinking and creativity. But so much of AI usage is related to pornography, which statistically might sound incorrect, and I did get comments about this, but I will explain. Things like deepfakes, and more recently, using Grok to undress random non-consenting women and children on Twitter. Before many of these sexist issues associated with modern technology came to fruition, feminists of the 90s saw the incoming World Wide Web and dreamed of how this cyberverse could promise freedom from the shackles of gender for women. Donna Haraway's A Cyborg Manifesto, with the famous quote, "I'd rather be a cyborg than a goddess," these new so-called cyberfeminists led the charge for these new so-called cyberfeminists, hoping for a future of liberation through technology. When we look at this now, we're like, girl, where's the liberation? Pretty obviously, technology and then social media has made it even worse for women, not better at all, but we will go into the cyberfeminist sort of thinking anyway. Many of these early cyberfeminist theories were unfortunately not based in material reality, and I wish they were. I wish we were all genderless cyborgs, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. Judy Wiseman, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm going to spell her last name for you because I googled it, but I don't know if this is right. It's spelled Wajcman. Apparently Weissman, I don't know, I'm so sorry, attempted to find a middle ground in her 2004 book Technofeminism, asking the question, can feminism steer a path between technophobia and technophilia? Right now, it's difficult to see any kind of feminist future in technology, which is far departed from the 1997 cyberfeminist ideas of a utopian female future. And it's also, technology has fully departed from any of these sort of utopian ideas that we had, or even just futuristic, Star Trek looking technology. It really didn't turn out anything like that. It's just tech bros in Silicon Valley, making LLMs. It just really didn't turn out how people imagined it, unfortunately. Most recently, on January 22nd, the Center for Countering Digital Hate published a report that Elon Musk's Grok had generated an estimated 3 million sexualized images, including 23,000 of children, just between December 29th to January 8th. The CCDH lists examples of sexualized images that were produced, including those depicting people wearing transparent bikinis or micro bikinis, uniformed healthcare workers with white fluids all over their face or on their legs, or women wearing only dental floss, saran wrap, or transparent tape, which somehow gets away with the algorithm of Grok, where it's not actually allowed to just make naked people, but creating all of these other explicit images instead is just as bad, but Grok is just totally okay with doing that. It's not just generative AI, which is furthering misogyny against women in the digital age. Laura Bates' recent book published last year, The New Age of Sexism, How the AI Revolution is Reinventing Misogyny, could not have come at a more integral time. Even so, it feels like it's already too late. While the focus of this book is on AI, Bates also goes a bit into other forms of online abuse. For example, in simulation or VR games, and also in real life, new technologies such as sex robots and cyber brothels, which I'll touch on too. I use this book as a reference for a lot of this episode alongside Judy Wiseman's book for a more theoretical approach as well. Also, I did mean to get this episode out earlier, but I got really obsessed with watching The Pit, which, by the way, it's Friday and there's a new episode out, but I'm recording this instead. So you're welcome. So really obsessed with that, watched the entire season in like one day. And then I also got really obsessed with crocheting again. And I gave myself carpal tunnel because I did it for like 3 days straight. I should probably preface this by saying like, I'm back at my parents' house right now, so I have nothing to do. So I'm just crocheting for 3 days when I could have been making this episode, but I wanted to make a scarf with a hood. Like, that's so much more important. Anyway, back to what I'm actually talking about. I guess I need to start with some generative AI stats. As of March 2024, which is 2 years ago at this point, the top 40 generative AI tools attracted nearly 3 billion visits per month. ChatGPT commanded 80% of this traffic, and users of generative AI skewed harshly towards young, highly educated males, which I can confirm for you based on the fact that I was still at uni, start of 2024, and every man in the library on ChatGPT. Like, that's their favorite website. Even though 2024 like seems like it's quite recent, these statistics are already almost completely out of date. Laura Bates noted that the Californian company Nvidia, which dominates the market in the chips needed for AI, saw its share price almost double between January and June 2024, making it the most valuable company in the world. Because that's freaky, with a value of 3.34 trillion. This is like 2 years ago at this point, mostly before AI had the like photo and video capabilities as it does nowadays, like the generating capabilities. But much of the published reports on AI usage focus on performance and increasing productivity. For example, Stanford University's Human-Centered AI report features key takeaways like record investment and usage as research continues to show strong productivity impacts, or global AI optimism is rising, to AI becomes more efficient, affordable, and accessible. There were a few notes in that about like the environmental concerns, and there's a decent amount of information on that as well regarding the environmental impacts of AI, which the UN Environmental Programme reports as including 4 main issues in regards to the environmental impacts. One being the toll on the planet of data centers. The electronics that they house rely on a staggering amount of grist, making a 2-kilo computer require 800 kilos of raw materials. And the AI chips also require rare earth elements, which are mined in environmentally destructive ways, not to mention the labor conditions to mine them are generally horrific. And the supposed employees in the third world are not being paid, or being paid like slave wages, or given other benefits for a job that's so taxing and dangerous to do. The second takeaway was that data centers produce electronic waste, including mercury and lead. Third takeaway was that data centers use water during construction and consistently to cool electronic compounds. It's estimated that globally, AI-related infrastructure may soon consume 6 times more water than Denmark as a country. The UN Environmental Programme notes this is a great problem when a quarter of humanity already lacks access to clean water and sanitation. The fourth takeaway is to power complex electronics, data centers require a lot of energy, which still comes from burning fossil fuels, obviously. Driven in part by the AI explosion, the number of data centers has surged to 8 million from 500,000 in 2012. As Laura Bates writes in her book, now imagine how much of that power we are burning just to satisfy the misogynistic fantasies of predatory men. I made a TikTok about this and had someone tell me that poor generation was actually an extremely small fraction of generative AI usage, and generative AI in general was a very small contributor to energy consumption. No, because like that's not really the point. Like the willful ignorance in that is just crazy. Also, the person who commented don't know their gender, but like we can all assume they worked for an AI company. So I was like, okay, well, your opinion's a bit swayed here. But they were also trying to tell me that, and they sent me like a picture of the ChatGPT data and how most of the like things generated by ChatGPT were text responses to questions, and that like video production was actually a really low percentage. But like ChatGPT isn't the program that's making deepfake porn. Like people aren't putting their like questions into ChatGPT for that, because at least ChatGPT is kind of monitored in what you send it, and it won't make like pornographic videos for you. I don't think, to be fair, I've never tried. The websites that let you make deepfakes aren't just like publishing their data publicly, and it's also probably not being tracked by anyone. There is a few like stats about the amount of deepfakes that are present on the internet, but even that is like not going to be 100% accurate, because I feel like you can't always figure out where things are. That's the biggest issue with porn, is that it's across like every single website in the world. Websites that constantly pop up and then are like taken down, and like across Twitter and Reddit and all of these different places. Like, how are you actually going to track all of these videos? It's also completely missing the point that the generation of videos requires a lot more power than the generation of a text response. So even if the generation of videos is lower than text responses, it could still be taking the same amount of energy. Like, I have to use an educated guess about this because the data like simply doesn't exist. Also, if you hear sirens outside, my suburb's like on fire right now, so that is a fire truck going past, if you happen to hear that. So even though I might not have like the exact data to back up what I'm saying, it's like it doesn't really exist, because it's just not something that you like can have access to. And I feel like that happens with a lot of other feminist related things as well. Like, people are like, where's your data source? Like, sometimes it just doesn't exist. Like, sometimes it just doesn't exist, and you low-key just have to guess, because research into a lot of these things, it doesn't happen. And sometimes the data is inaccessible. Like, that's just how it is. Anyway, before we get into the AI usage in creating deepfakes specifically, another detriment that has been widely reported are the potential political issues, such as Laura Bates' example of Sadiq Khan in 2023, then Mayor of London, who had a deepfake depicting him arguing that pro-Palestinian marches should take precedence over Remembrance Day in the UK, which, like, they should, but like regardless, this is not something he actually said. This was a deepfake of him. After this video came out, it like kind of went viral in the UK, and Khan warned this could lead to serious disorder, especially currently when there is so much political unrest. Like, this sort of video being produced, even if it's him not saying something that's like totally crazy, like, you still can't produce videos of politicians saying things that they didn't say. However, as Bates puts it, before that case hit the headlines because of its political implications, deepfakes had already been having a serious impact on the lives of women and girls for some time. Especially in 2023, most mainstream news about the potential societal detriments of generative AI were related to political manipulation and electoral interference. Bates writes, these are, of course, important issues, but research suggests that 96% of deepfakes are non-consensual pornography, of which feature 99% women. So, like, even if these political concerns are like valid, it's really not the main issue when you talk about deepfakes. Even keeping it on the topic of politics and misogyny, female politicians already face extreme online harassment. Research funded by Gender Equity Victoria, based on interviews with 24 current or former political workers in Victoria, revealed that 1, gendered cyber hate was a norm in politics for women. 2, gendered cyber hate is damaging democracy. And 3, political workplaces need to take responsibility for the online well-being of their staff. There are almost definitely more videos of female politicians, more deepfake videos at least, that are pornographic, as opposed to politicians in general who are being deepfaked into saying things they didn't say. So, like, what is the real concern here, actually? A Welsh study from late last year came to a similar conclusion, that female politicians experienced increased incidences of violence, abuse, and harassment by the public, online, and in person, or by peers in the council chamber. Violence against women affects representation because it discourages women from entering or remaining in politics as well. Like, it's more likely that deepfakes are actually going to affect the personal lives of politicians, not cause political unrest. In 2024, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, saw a deepfake porn video of herself created with AI and posted on Twitter. She told Rolling Stone that digitizing violent humiliation is just like physical rape, and predicted that people were going to kill themselves over this. Her prediction was correct. About AI deepfake pornography, she said, Because this technology threatens to do it at scale, this is about class subjugation. It's a subjugation of entire people. And then when you do intersect that with debates over bodily autonomy, when you're able to actively subjugate all women in society on a scale of millions at once digitally, it's a direct connection with taking their rights away. Her seeing a video deepfake of herself had nothing to do with the fact that she's a politician. You see that deepfakes are much more than just a political problem. Even for women in politics, the biggest impact is not on their career, but the absolute horror associated with seeing non-consensual images of yourself that look entirely real. On the 22nd of January, Paris Hilton spoke outside the US Capitol alongside AOC in support of a bill to make it easier for deepfake porn victims to sue those who created or shared the content. She was a victim of revenge pornography at 19. She says, at the time, people called it a scandal. It wasn't, it was abuse. There were no laws at the time to protect me, and that there weren't even words to describe what had been done to me. She notes that today there is at least 100,000 deepfake images of her circulating the internet, and that it's even more difficult to protect women and girls from this new technology. When revenge pornography, like sharing of revenge pornography or image-based abuse, which is the correct term, when that kind of started becoming a big problem, I feel like there was a lot of, as she says, like scandal associated with it, because it was a very victim blamey sort of thing. If you didn't want those videos to be like videos or photos to be shared with everyone, then like, why did you send them to someone? That sort of thing. But it's like, you can't even use that excuse when it comes to deepfakes. And you couldn't have used that excuse when it came to revenge porn at the time, because if that man wanted to humiliate a woman, he would have found a way to do it regardless. Even if the sexual images don't really exist, he can just create them these days. And the same victim blaming occurs now anyway. Why do you even have pictures of yourself on the internet if you don't want a man to take them and make deepfake porn of you? Like, that's your own fault, actually. Laura Bates writes that women are already 27% more likely than men to be harassed online, and that Black women are 84% more likely to receive abuse than white women. When this is applied to deepfake porn, the impacts against women are staggering. And while we know this is happening to public figures, mostly like female celebrities and politicians, and it's been happening for years, it's also becoming a growing problem in like schools, high schools, primary schools, workplaces even as well. In the US, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said the number of AI-generated child sexual abuse images reported to its cyber tip line went from 4,700 in 2023 to 440,000 in just the first 6 months of 2025. In 2025, at least half of the US states had brought in some kind of legislation to address the use of generative AI in making deepfakes, but only some of these laws addressed simulated child porn. The issue is becoming so widespread in schools, even if there are adequate actions being taken now, it's already too late for so many young girls that have experienced this kind of abuse and trauma as a result. And I feel like it's even more compounded by the fact that this is happening to them by their same age classmates. Like, I can't even imagine coming back from that loss of trust of like people who are supposed to be your peers. And it's something that's uniquely different to traditional bullying methods too, because it's like such an insane form of humiliation. And like, it's also the sort of thing that is less likely to be reported to adults as well, because I feel like it's something that you would be really embarrassed about. Obviously shouldn't be, but it definitely would be a difficult thing to bring up to an adult figure. Bates writes, deepfake pornography is a new form of abuse, but its underlying power dynamics are very, very old. You can see this in the fact that so many of the videos include women's faces being ejaculated on or portray them in hyper-submissive positions. Some depict women being raped. It's all about putting women in their place. It's all about power and control. It's not just about sexualizing them, it's about subjugating them too. The fact that this level of abuse is happening in even primary schools is just an indication of how badly male children are effectively being groomed into being women abusers earlier and earlier. And this kind of like almost innate sense of misogyny, just because it's being taught into them so young. It makes you understand why people think men are innately misogynistic, because even in primary school, they're able to commit like or able to victimize women to such a degree. Like, a child under the age of 18 should never even be exposed to pornography in the first place. To be voluntarily making explicit videos of their classmates, namely female classmates, is just an insane problem to be having in a society, one with repercussions that will last throughout these children's lives. Of course, mostly for the female victims, but we already see how grown adult males and their hatred of women affects us. How are these boys going to turn out when they're already abusing women before they even considered adults? Much of the advice and measures being put into place to avoid further incidents of deepfake porn in schools falls onto the victims, the girls' shoulders. Advice such as not posting images of yourself online to avoid being made a victim is liberally handed out. Obviously, that wouldn't prevent anything anyway. I mean, all that's required to make these sorts of videos is a couple images of you. If you're a school student, there are always images in like yearbooks and newsletters and even on the school's social media pages. Like, you can't remove yourself from the internet even as a child. And Bates writes about this new advice as well that's being given to female students as the new frontier of victim blaming. In the same way that police and law enforcement agencies have for decades created posters and campaigns urging women not to become a victim of rape or let a night full of promise turn into a morning full of regrets, now we are being warned to protect ourselves somehow from a form of abuse so easily committed that all a perpetrator needs are a few photographs of us. I don't even know what the solution to this would be. I am hoping that laws like the social media ban in Australia will have some kind of positive impact. But even these new laws in Australia have loopholes. Like, you can give talks to young boys as well that they'll just ignore. You can hand out stronger punishments, but the problem is still going to be there. Like, it just starts so young at this point that I don't even know. I literally don't even know what you would do to prevent it. The next title in my script is just grok-herculeanly, new word I made up. It's a combination of grok, Charlie Kirk, and genuinely. So if you guys ever want to just describe something as genuinely grok and Charlie Kirk, there's a new term for you. Grok-herculeanly. Going back to what happened recently with Grok, the reason it made the news was because it was so out in the open, I suppose. It's not like this isn't regularly happening to, say, behind doors, I guess, on porn websites, deepfake websites, Reddit, subreddits. But it was almost the first time that it was so publicly acknowledged and so just liberally done to so many women on this website. Elon Musk claims that posts by Grok would always comply with the law of the countries in which it operates. In Australia, it's illegal to create and share explicit content made with AI without the person's consent. But still, there had been an increase in reports of this occurring in Australia by Grok, as per Australia's eSafety Commissioner. He also claimed that he was not aware of any naked underage images generated by Grok. First of all, no one said they were naked. They just said they were explicit images of children. They don't have to be naked for that to be the case. And also that Grok does not spontaneously generate images. It does so only according to user requests. Yeah, we know. We saw the tweets of men under random women's accounts being undress her, put white fluid on her face. Yeah, we saw it. Do you not think there should be some guardrails on these requests? Anything along the lines of not being able to take the clothes off women? Why would that be a thing that Grok just does for you? And did apparently 30,000 times to children. Why would that ever be an option for an AI assistant to do? Also, a kind of disgusting side note, I found, I was looking through my bookmarks and I bookmarked this tweet. Before Elon Musk turned off the ability to see other people's likes on Twitter, he had liked this picture of a woman who looks like she's dead, lying on a bed face down with her back end faced towards the camera. It's a very obviously necrophiliac sort of image. And he had liked some other fucking crazy things before he turned likes off. But someone quoted this with, there is this theory about technophilia stemming from necrophilia. That makes so much sense actually. So just thought I'd share that. Laura Bates mentions in her book a quote from the owner of one of the biggest deepfake porn websites who told the BBC, I think that as long as you're not trying to pass it off as the real thing, it shouldn't really matter because it's basically fake. I don't really feel that consent is required. It's a fantasy, it's not real. In fact, 74% of deepfake porn consumers say they don't feel guilty about viewing the content at all. It like always comes back to this content of like, it's just a fantasy. Like, no, guys, it's just a fantasy. Like, it's totally fine. Like, the idea of fantasizing and pornography and erotica, somehow cleansing the reality from whatever occurs in it. Every woman who has had a deepfake made of her is a victim and has almost the exact same experience of those who experienced supposed real abuse or real sharing of revenge pornography. Like, which also these same men, these same men who are watching deepfake porn probably committed against them as well. But like, I don't understand how you can be like, no, it's just a fantasy, it's not real. Like, what do you mean it's not real? Like, that's a real woman's face. Like, she's right there. She's in the video. Like she's in the video. Like, what do you mean it's not real? Like, well, it is. Like, there's basically no difference between deep fakes, deep reels, deep Instagram reels. And while the deepfake issue is probably one of those at the forefront of how this technology has recently been creating new forms of misogyny that men can very easily inflict against women, there are also a number of other technological advances in misogyny itself. As I mentioned in Laura Bates' book, she discusses many other examples. Mainly, I'm just going to focus on the concept of virtual assault, like in video games, in VR, and also sex or slave robots. Virtual assault is, I guess, like the most descriptive term for this concept that encompasses not just like violent and sexist language in game chat rooms or in Discord servers, but also the simulated assault that occurs in VR, for example, VR chat or the metaverse, which I'm pretty sure no one actually uses Meta, like, what's it called, like Horizon Worlds and stuff. Like, I don't actually know if anyone's on there, but I'm pretty sure quite a few people use VR chat. So I guess I'll just be talking about VR chat. When I think of sexual assault or exposure to sexual content via video games, my first thought, because I feel like it happens with younger people, is Roblox, which is an extremely popular video game online platform. I sound like I'm 45, which I don't really know why it's so popular because like the only game I've tried is Dress to Impress, and like it's a good game, but I don't really know if it's appropriate for like 5-year-olds. Like actually thinking about that, because like it was fine for me to play. The most concerning factor about this platform is that around 40% of players are under 13, which in itself is not that big of an issue. Like people have talked about a lot that there's no like places online for children anymore. There used to be like Friv and like Club Penguin and all of these little websites, and I feel like most of them were safe enough. Like, I never got groomed as a child, but I don't know enough to say. But when safety isn't a priority in developing games for children, it can and will be taken advantage of by those who want to exploit children. In a report from ABC News, it lists how the company Roblox is facing over 100 lawsuits, with one law firm claiming that it was investigating thousands of child sexual exploitation and abuse claims. From Roblox, it's common for predators to get children to further communicate with them via Discord. I've talked about Discord before. When I randomly got added to this Discord server for like my year group at school, which was made up of like 90% of like the male cohort, I saw they had 2 channels of note, one which was for sharing porn and one which was for sharing gore. Why you would be doing that with your classmates, I don't know. Which is apparently also just completely allowed on the platform. Like, okay. In the same arena of Discord, there are multiplayer game voice chat rooms. Going back to that concept I like briefly mentioned at the start in the intro, cyberfeminists who dreamed of sort of like an online future, online genderless world in the metaverse. On the contrary, women often play as male characters as a method of reducing in-game harassment, especially those which have voice chats, and especially when it's like competitive gameplays, because in those sorts of modes, people are kind of expected to have voice chats on. Like I used to play Overwatch and I never turned my voice chat on because I knew that like I would immediately get bullied for being a woman. Like um also I was really bad at the game, so I think I would have been bullied regardless. But anyway, the fact that women are playing as male characters because they're scared of being assaulted is not exactly the genderless future that cyberfeminists had imagined. You might have seen the compilations before of just like extreme sexual harassment in voice chats, particularly in first-person shooter games, as I mentioned. In a lot of these videos, men, even on the same team as female players, will just continuously, over the entire game, spew like extremely misogynistic language, sexually harass them, and just generally bully any player with a female voice. Even if the women aren't saying anything, it will just continue like through the entire game, like continuous misogynistic language and bullying. This is like a very, this is something that's been happening for years and years, but it gets even worse in these kind of metaverse platforms, VR chat being one of the most popular, because VR also allows for body movements, like hand movements, sometimes full body movements, like haptics and stuff as well. Enforcing guidelines or policing any behavior in these sorts of chat rooms often relies entirely on voluntary reporting. There are usually some worlds which are like policed by the actual company, for example, Facebook or Meta, or Microsoft. But then if you make your own world, that is kind of just a self-policed area. VR chat is also officially for those aged 13 and older, but there are many worlds in VR chat where people will like simulate sex with each other, and there are also no guardrails to saying whatever you want. I don't think. Roblox, for example, at least monitors all the voice chats, I'm assuming with AI, and will ban people who say words that aren't allowed. Like me, I got banned from Roblox one. I don't know what I said, but they banned me for a week. And like I can't have even said anything crazy. So like at least they have that. Like that's pretty good. One thing that is also specifically different about VR is that the immersive nature makes it so much more like real sexual assault. Laura Bates writes, when it was revealed in 2024 that UK police were investigating the virtual gang rape of a girl below the age of 16 in the metaverse, a senior officer familiar with the case told the media that the victim suffered psychological trauma similar to that of someone who has been physically raped. Many dismiss this case as like an imaginary crime, since you can realistically just like turn off the game and like take your headphones off and like leave. But I feel like the same could be said to a lot of real life rape victims. Like you could have just left the room sort of thing, when that's obviously not true. Nina Jane Patel, a metaverse researcher, talked about her experience being abused in Horizon Worlds, which was developed by Meta. She described how a group of male avatars groped her and subjected her to a stream of sexual innuendo. They photographed her and sent a message reading, "Don't pretend you didn't love it." Patel's description of this abuse, and also the way that she sort of described it as abuse in the first place, struck a nerve with many commenters. Many, as Laura Bates noted, vehemently disagreed with her own description of what she had experienced. They said, "You are hurting the credibility of real life victims. Do not equate a couple of arseholes being rude online with rape." Another one said, "I bet a lot of actual real rape victims wish they could block someone, log out, or take off their headset and stop their rape when someone begins sexually assaulting them. They don't have such a luxury." One commenter on her article suggested an argument could be made to allow completely free pretend activity in VR as a way to allow people to blow off steam and do things virtually, including crime, murder, rape, that they would never dream of doing in the real world. Well, I mean, why would you be dreaming of doing it in the metaverse if you're not dreaming of doing it in the real world? Like that, what? That doesn't make any sense. But as Bates writes, this shows how blasé we are about women's experiences. We expect women to endure VR abuse so that violent men can enact violent fantasies in an obscene playground. This commenter wasn't even like, in specific worlds where you voluntarily go into, we should allow whatever. Like, they were literally just saying in the entire metaverse, any VR game, you should just be able to do whatever you want. Like, why would that be allowed, actually? Even though this is a new horizon on supposed virtual rape. The discussion of this concept actually emerged as early as 1993 in the virtual world Lambda Moo, as noted in an article published in the Oxford Journal of Legal Studies. In 2021, research into VR chat found that users were exposed to sexual harassment and abuse every 7 minutes. The authors recommended establishing a new terminology of meta rape to reduce the associated lack of realness with the term virtual. Meta rape would refer to basically any kind of sexual harassment that occurred in VR or the metaverse. But what's important to note about this supposed meta rape is that sexual harassment and violence in the metaverse occur for the same reasons that they do in real life. And oftentimes, as I mentioned, by men who feel more emboldened to do it in virtual reality and behind a screen. But these forms of abuse described in that same Oxford Journal article are tangible lived experiences with real-world physical ramifications. When Microsoft describes VR as being designed to marry the digital and physical worlds, the connection between the two cannot be severed and nor can it be underestimated either. Another newly emerging concept occurs in the form of humanoid robots, which can be used for practically anything from cleaning your house to acquiescing to every of your sexual whims. With the advent of modern technology, housework should have theoretically become easier as it became more automated, for example, with washing machines, dishwashers, vacuum cleaners. But this, alongside late stage capitalism and the cost of living, means that in families, both parents work now, but then women still do all the housework when they come home. So if anything, the overall workload stayed the same for most women before and after the automation of housework. It's interesting then that there's been such a huge recent focus on humanoid robots to do housework for you. Like Danny Gonzalez, the YouTuber, which I never thought I'd use as a reference in this podcast, but he made a video a few months ago about this new Neo robot that had a focus on its housework ability. This, I think, is related to a TikTok I saw by user Cowboy Blacked on TikTok. As I already said on TikTok, the TikTok that I saw on TikTok about AI being a slavery fetish, which AI itself already is kind of weird. The idea of a virtual assistant that a personal assistant that will do everything for you is already kind of weird slavery. But when you make these human looking robots specifically to do things for you, that's even more what he's saying in that video. That's literally you want a slave. Do it yourself. Or why, in the first place, actually, why would a robot ever be humanoid? In terms of housework, you would think we'd be making more inventions like robot vacuums or better mobility aids for older people or less able people. Why would you want a humanoid robot that walks on two legs and then has to face the issues of balancing on two legs and picking up things in arms that aren't even specifically designed to pick up groceries? Why would you not make it specifically for housework in a different way that's not humanoid? There's just not really any point to make it look like a human. As an elderly person, for example, why would you want this random robot man in your house? Robot man or woman? Wouldn't it be better to have something that helps with mobility, something that carries your groceries on side, or a dishwasher that you don't have to lean down to put dishes in? Wouldn't that help you more than this guy in your house? That's just one gripe I have with the robot thing, and that there's no reason for them to ever be humanoid. But there's also seems to be a common thread in these inventions of robots. Not only are they human-like, but they're very often feminized. The default voice for Siri, for example, being female, is an older example. But with most other AI assistants defaulting to female as well, it seems to be a reoccurring problem. It just kind of follows that same social idea of women filling the role of assistant, which is only made worse by the fact of having a female humanoid robot that does your housework. An article by ABC notes that while most assistant AI is female, when IBM's Watson for Oncology launched in 2015 to help doctors process medical data, it had a male voice, noting that the message is clear: women serve and men instruct. There is a lot of data available showing that conversations with female AI chatbots or assistants are more likely to be abusive or generally focused on like sexual conversation. For example, a bank in Brazil reporting that its feminized chatbot received 95,000 sexually harassing messages in a single year. I mean, we can all guess how many it would probably have received if the chatbot was masculinized instead. Also, that song Fembot by Charlie XCX is so good until it gets to the male rapper verse. And then he starts treating the fake Charlie XCX fembot as like a sex robot. And I'm like, okay, well, like you just ruined the whole song. So anyway, the feminized chatbot thing likely again has to do with the fact that most people designing robots are male, or at least like AI sort of technology and robots, with women making up only 22% of AI professionals globally. And these men designing the robots are also probably sexualizing their own creations. Weissman writes, even the most visionary futurists have us living in households that, in social rather than technological terms, resemble the households of today, i.e. having something human like doing housework for a parent and two kids, the nuclear family, which is a whole other concept. Like, actually a really interesting concept about the fact that like even when you look into future and you imagine futuristic households, it still always has the basis of like a family, and always like the household realistically always looks the same, is set up the same, but the technology is just different. This gendered basis of robots reaches its peak realistically with sex robots, and more recently also cyber brothels. There was this tweet that went around for years, which showed an article from a while ago saying by 2023 we could all be having sex with robots, with this picture of like a human woman laying over like a masculine robot. Not really sure that image predicted how this supposed sex with robots in 2023 was going to go, because I think it's the other way around. I'm not going to go too far into this, but Laura Bates' book focuses a lot on this new technology, mainly the integration of AI into sex robots. For example, she herself went to a cyber brothel in Berlin, which like, ew. Berlin is a weird place, where you're able to pick how the doll is presented to you, with options such as ripped clothing or blood. At this cyber brothel, I believe they had multiple options for female sex robots, but only one male robot, which was not typically booked by women, but gay men. These robots also always fall into porn categories, either like the stereotypical porn star body, which is hypersexualized, or to a schoolgirl outfit and a very childlike body to like a dominatrix. To paraphrase Bates, men are basically making their ideal porn trope of a woman, except for the fact that she is unable to actually say no. A sex doll brothel opened in Canada not long after an incel sort of inspired massacre by killer Alec Minason. A spokesperson for this brothel reportedly told the media that the brothel could have prevented this massacre by allowing customers like Alec Minason to enact their violent fantasies in a safe, non-judgmental way. Another spokesperson told a local news site, "We try to focus on the fact that since we have this service for men who have these dark, violent fantasies, instead of putting out the urge to act aggressively, they can do something like this, which is safe for everyone." Not safe for the robot, but sure. Once again, I don't know where this material divide comes from. Humanoid, with human in the name, robots are viewed as real people by these men. Like, if they had an urge to be violent, why would it have to be to a robot that looks like a woman? Why are they not just going to like a rage room? Like, why are they needing to sexually assault a feminized robot that looks identical to a real woman's body? The robots themselves obviously don't have emotion. They don't experience rape or sexual assault, but that doesn't mean it's not the crime that is happening against them. I talked about that before, the idea of technophilia coming from necrophilia and the fact that Elon Musk is probably a necrophiliac, which was with the vibe with like sex dolls, definitely. Sex robots are kind of another step up from that. Female robots who can speak, have personalities coded into them, and sometimes be programmed to do things like beg for help or, be very specific porn tropes that depict pedophilia and all these other disgusting supposed fetishes. For the man who is having sex with this robot, he is still a rapist, even if there is no real victim. Once again, there is no safe way for a man to act out fantasies of violence unless it's committing suicide. Like, if that's his fantasy, then go right ahead. The more these fantasies are played out by men through watching porn, through supposed consensual exchanges with real women, to sex robots who are unable to consent, to then real life femicide, it all comes from the same thing. There is never a safe way for abuse to occur. That would literally never make sense. I'm gonna go back to cyberfeminism for a second. Basically, just to discuss it as this type of feminism, which was rooted in specifically technology and the cyberverse. Judy Weissman's book is the main thing that I'll be referencing here, but also some other resources based on cyberfeminism specifically. She writes that feminist theories of the relationship between gender and technology have taken diverse forms, while liberal feminism conceived of the problem as one of equality of access and opportunity. Socialists and radical feminism analysed the gendered nature of technology itself. Cyberfeminism initially took a quite post-feminist approach, hoping again for a free future of technology that would effectively liberate women from gender. Unfortunately, this was never based in material reality. In 1985, Donna Haraway published her essay, A Cyborg Manifesto, identifying a new form of feminism and bringing together a number of disparate philosophical responses to technological advances. She discusses a future in which the lines between human and machine will disappear, making gender effectively obsolete. The utopian dream for the hope of a monstrous world without gender, which I paraphrased from Kira Hall's article titled Cyberfeminism. Her concluding statement of this essay was, as I mentioned, I would rather be a cyborg than a goddess. It was a call to action for women to look towards a gender-neutralized future. I would interpret it too as a desire to reinvent these icons, I guess, icons based in religion before we had anything like technology. It's really just a reinvention of the term goddess, but futuristic instead, is it not? But it's kind of also moving away from these older ideas and reinventing them with the aid of incoming technology. The manifesto gave rise to, slightly confusingly, cyberfeminism. Judy Weissman, who I will also discuss more later, critiques Haraway's work in saying that while it has stimulated important new insights into the gender power relations of technology, she too, but even more so her acolytes, risk fetishizing new technologies. Her acolytes being those who had a more post-feminist approach to technology, aka fetishizing new technologies. So cyberfeminism was inspired by Haraway's manifesto, but also French feminist theory, which ew. Sorry to my French listeners. Every episode I'm I hate France and Germany. Sorry. But partially also as a reaction to the pessimism of the 1980s feminist approaches to technology. VNS Matrix, a group based in Adelaide. Ew. Actually, I don't know. I've never been to Adelaide. They released a cyberfeminist manifesto for the 21st century in 1991, which eventually reached writer Sadie Plant, one of the most well-known cyberfeminist theorists. Weissman describes the hopes of cyberfeminists as those promises of emancipation from the frailties and failings of mortal flesh, which were reaching a new crescendo in the cyberspace age. Cyberfeminists assumed a supposed gender-free future in cyberspace, but their theories were extremely post-feminist, which I have talked about in a previous episode. If you're trying to understand what post-feminist means, feel free to go watch it. I think it's titled Don't Follow the TikTok Trend Down the Post-Feminist Hole. Genius title, that one. In the 90s, they were already post-feminist, was my point. And also their predictions of how future technologies would exist in society were outlandishly wrong. The idea of us all living in the cyberverse in 2025, that is such a joke now. Weisman also describes cyberfeminism as basically the cultural turn against determinist arguments, emphasizing subjectivity and agency, which generates a utopian perspective. This is particularly characteristic of post-feminist cultural theories. A common argument is that the digital revolution heralds the decline of traditional institutional practices and power bases, including patriarchal power. Looking back now, this doesn't make any sense. We know this is anything but true. I mean, the entire concept of this episode is based in the material reality of how technology is being more and more used to subjugate women, both online and in the production of such technologies, which often falls on women of the third world. Like, the idea of technology bringing about a decline of these traditional institutions of patriarchal power, even though this technology is made by the same men who uphold patriarchal power. Like, how would that make any sense? I don't know. Many sociological and philosophical views of emerging technology in the 2000s came back to this idea of unlimited freedom, which is a very libertarian and hedonistic approach. Weisman writes, the libertarian culture of computer programmers is based on the values of freedom. Freedom to create, freedom to appropriate whatever knowledge is available, and freedom to redistribute this knowledge under any form and channel chosen by the hacker, more specifically the white male hacker, which kind of is what you think of when you think of the beginnings of the internet. And nothing has changed since. Like, still the way modern technologies are used reflect this sort of hedonistic desire. Porn websites being like the most visited sites has been a fact for many years, but nowadays it's entirely leaked out from just like the dark recesses of the internet. Porn is being made of women who just exist on the internet, who just have one social media account, which, with social media becoming so omnipresent, it's not really a choice whether you engage in it or not. Can I connect this back to how much I hate LinkedIn? Like, why would I want social media for like my work, my employment, like that? Why would I want that? Like, actually, nothing pisses me off more than LinkedIn. Anyway, Sadie Plant, who I mentioned as one of the like forefront cyberfeminist theorists, acknowledged this unlimited freedom of technology, but she actually celebrated cyber technology out of control because for her, out of control signified freedom from male control. This is the root of cyberfeminism, again, not existing within material reality, which I don't necessarily blame these early feminists for. I mean, obviously, their context in technology was severely different to how I interpret it now, but it's fairly obvious that technology being out of control has only further subjugated women under male control. The root of this issue is literally that technology is not some sci-fi futuristic concept. Weisman writes that cyberfeminists elaborated a new feminist imaginary, different from the material reality of the existing technological order. However, she notes that a technological system is never merely technical. Its real-world functioning has technical, economic, organizational, political, and even cultural elements. Technology and society then are bound together inextricably, and the traffic between the two is reciprocal. Technology and society are no longer seen as separate spheres which influence each other. It's like actually kind of crazy to me that this is all from her book Technofeminism, which was written in 2004, sorry. And even at that time, she is describing it like exactly. But regardless, it was a popular theme in postmodern feminism and queer theory that just pretending, it is a popular theme to be fair, that just pretending gender doesn't exist or that or changing your gender role, for example, will be liberating. Within that theory of technology being separated from real life somehow, with cyberfeminists, this gender freedom occurred via digital means. Via being an unknown person behind a keyboard, you could realistically be whoever you wanted in the cyberverse. On the internet, you can, again, be whoever you want, but also conform or resist conformation to whatever gender roles you want to. Although identifying as a different gender online can seem to subvert gender, Weisman notes that it can be just as forcefully argued that it ultimately reinforced and reproduced these differences, just as we know that I discussed women playing as male characters online isn't some liberating thing from their woman gender. It's actually a self-preservation technique. Weisman also makes an important critique in noting that cyberfeminism may appear to be anarchist and anti-establishment, but in effect, it requires for its performances all the latest free market American capitalist gizmos. Love the use of the word gizmos. In modern terms, how do you have an online genderless persona without an iPhone 17 Pro? And who made that iPhone 17 Pro? For you, was it a woman in the third world? Yeah. And obviously, I own an iPhone. Okay, the video of this episode is being recorded on my iPhone, but I don't claim that having access to an online world through my iPhone and Wi-Fi plan is liberating me from gender in any way. I'm not a cyborg. I'm not a cyborg for having an iPhone, actually. But again, cyberfeminism didn't have to go this way, down this sort of theory hole. And I will be blaming that Adelaide group, VNS Matrix, for this strange post-feminist landscape that was produced. I honestly urge you to have a look at some of their stuff just to be like, what the fuck? The main well-known cyberfeminist quote from VNS Matrix was, "The clitoris is the direct line to the matrix." I'm not even sure how to describe this supposed strand of feminism, but just imagine what a male would imagine technology-based feminism to be, hypersexualized, female-bodied cyborgs, and Doja Cat type of sex. Cyberfeminism is not and was not ever feminism, but perhaps if they had followed more in Donna Haraway's footsteps, it could have had some more actual basis to it. Weisman writes, "For Haraway, the cyborg is an ironic political myth with the potential to regenerate socialist feminism. Her followers have been drawn to the cyborg for its discursive possibilities. While Haraway's cyborg symbolizes a non-holistic, non-universalizing vision for feminist strategies, it has been taken up within cyberfeminism as the symbol of an essential female being. This reflects the fact that Haraway's acolytes tend not to share her firm grounding in the history and social studies of science." I obviously cannot summarize the entirety of cyberfeminist history, but if you do want to know more, then Mindy Su's Cyberfeminism Index is a good resource. Just keep in mind most of cyberfeminist history is decidedly anti-feminist, so let me know if you want the PDF for free. Who said that? Also, of course, she went to UCLA. I just had to mention that, Mindy Sue. Also kind of pisses me off because I saw this TikTok the other day of someone recommending cyberfeminist books. And all the comments are like, "Oh my God, I really wanted to get into cyberfeminism." I'm like, you wanted to get into this fake form of feminism that died after the 1990s. And it also was only built off the fact that no one had any idea how technology would actually turn out. Maybe don't. As Weisman writes, in the end, Haraway and those influenced by her give semiotics precedence over materialist aspects of techno-science. Just summing it up entirely. This doesn't mean that the root concept of cyberfeminism should be forgotten. And I mean that because it's more crucial than ever to be having technology at the forefront of feminist critique. But let's rename it radical cyberfeminism and forget whatever the hell happened in the 90s. Actually, a better term would be technofeminism, which was described through Judy Weisman's frameworks. Backstory on Judy Weisman: she is an Australian sociologist currently working as the Anthony Giddens Professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science, and she's also the principal investigator of the Women in Data Science and AI project at the Alan Turing Institute. Weisman is an expert in analyzing the gendered nature of technology, publishing her book Technofeminism in 2004. Again, much of which I've said predicted the future of technology to a T, and simultaneously critiqued or questioned the material reality of cyberfeminists who believed in this gender-free future. Her aim with this book of essays was to offer a way between utopian optimism and pessimistic fatalism for technofeminism. She conceptualized the technofeminist framework, which linked technology as both a source and a consequence of gender relations. To me, it seems like she's one of the first to have actually put this specifically into words, and as I mentioned, entirely predicted how the internet was going to become in the current day. One of her most important points was that technology is never merely technical or social, and that these two things can't be unentwined. She does acknowledge that the internet is marked by military origins and the white male hacker world that spawned it. Therefore, the theory of technofeminism builds on the insights of cyborg feminism, but grounds it more firmly in a thoroughgoing materialist approach to the studies of technology, including its own role in those studies. In this way, technofeminism also is a more rounded critique of mainstream science and technology studies. Instead of just ignoring this history and even the current state of technology to wish for some like utopian genderless future that doesn't exist, studies of technology and feminism must be grounded in reality. The history of some technologies is, again, integral for a feminist approach. As Weissman notes, if we regard technology as neutral but subject to possible misuse, as most people do when they look at AI, generative AI specifically, it's often seen as this like neutral piece of technology that just is unfortunately being used to create porn, or accidentally, like ChatGPT, giving people detailed instructions on how to kill themselves. Is it really correct to view this as a neutral creation? When you think of the type of men who actually code this generative AI, who already hate women and already bring that bias over into whatever they're coding. Of course, the correct guardrails are not being put in place when the same men who code generative AI are the same ones using it to make deepfakes. Like, hello. In the words of Weissman, rather than celebrating cyberspace for providing the opportunity for free expression of people's desires, we should lament the massive growth of pornographic websites, amongst the most frequently visited and profitable sites on the internet. Again, this book is from 2004, and it has obviously become so much worse since then. So perhaps we should engage with Weissman's technofeminist framework instead and reject that of the early cyberfeminists. Even in terms of other feminist approaches to technology, such as radical feminists soaring opposition to the development of new reproductive technologies, such as how surrogacy has been effectively used to enslave poor women, specifically in less well-off countries socioeconomically, and also ecofeminists who analyze the military technology and the ecological effect of other modern technologies as products of a violent patriarchal culture. Even technological advances in military weapons and warfare. Really, any of these critiques should be given precedence over these like fairy tales created by cyberfeminists. The technofeminist framework is therefore a really useful way to look at modern technological misogyny. As Weissman writes, rather than being transformed by the internet, conflicts are actually more likely to be carried into it. And we see that there are so many extreme forms of misogyny that are being carried out online that wouldn't necessarily be carried out if the people who are committing the crimes had to do them in real life. A lot of young boys who wouldn't directly abuse young girls or their female classmates are more emboldened by the fact that the internet gives males specifically this abusive power and makes it also so much more accessible. Before releasing revenge porn of someone required that content to exist in the first place. Now it can be created in a matter of seconds on some random Googleable website and sent to every single person you know. And this level of humiliation and hatred is so easily expressed by even young boys just because of its accessibility and like to the point now that it's becoming ubiquitous on the internet. Okay, my phone like almost just blew up. It got so hot that it turned off. So just recording a new clip. Weissman wrote that feminists had identified the men's monopoly of technology as an important source of their power. But whether technology itself was inherently patriarchal remained more contentious. When you look at the overall standing of technology today, the internet and social media, there's only very small pockets on any platform which aren't rife with misogyny or another form of hatred. It's difficult to imagine any way in which technology isn't inherently patriarchal. But again, turning to fatalism and pessimism doesn't really help us. At this point, the internet is very much here to stay. So rejecting it wouldn't really be effective. One positive, at least, of the internet, as Weissman writes about, is that women are reinterpreting the technologies as tools for political organizing and the means for creation of new feminist communities. But internet communities have a lot of downsides in terms of sharing knowledge about local events, emerging feminist issues and theories. Global connections via social media are integral to modern feminism. But in terms of actual organizing, it's difficult to cross over from the internet to real life. I do not know of any actual feminist organizations you can join in Australia. I know a lot of charities to support, but in terms of actual pressuring of governments and protesting and doing literally like whatever else you can even do at this point in time, there isn't much. And even as Weissman writes, recognition of these opportunities to create feminist communities is not to endorse a utopian idea of cyberspace being gender-free and the key to women's liberation. She says she remains skeptical of exaggerated claims by cyber gurus and cyberfeminists about the internet being the technological basis for a new form of society. Rather, it is to stress that the internet, like other technologies, is flexible and contains contradictory possibilities. The contradictions being that even in the most dire of times, with AI pornography, meta rape, and right-wing male podcasters, women still do find ways to connect via technology. In her book, Laura Bates had some further recommendations, mostly related to the law and attempting to have laws that evolve with the growing misogynistic crimes on the internet. She writes that the threat is growing rapidly. We must take action to tackle this now before it has become so ubiquitous and normalized that it is too late. Over the past few years, deepfakes have proliferated exponentially, with the number of such videos online doubling every 6 months. According to independent research from deepfake analyst Genevieve O and the #MyImageMyChoice campaign, more non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfake videos were posted online in 2023 than in all other years combined. I'm sure that data has got even worse by 2026. It's unfortunate, again, that it does almost seem too late for action to be taken, even if great laws and punishments that are effective are put into place for men who share illegal deepfakes. So many women have already had to pay the price of being victimized before these policies ever got put in place. Bates notes that to date, there are no international conventions or general principles specifically designed to protect victims of sexual violence and exploitation through the deployment of deepfake images. While existing laws may offer some protection, there is no certainty. Simply put, existing legislation has not kept pace with the rapidly evolving technology. This is especially the case in schools. As I talked about, there was an incident in a Melbourne school relating to deepfake porn, which affected 50 girls. Kathleen Maltzahn, the Chief Executive of Sexual Assault Services in Victoria, pointed out that schools are not equipped to deal with this, and they come to our services, and our services are not funded at the level we need to be able to go into schools and give an emergency response. In other words, everybody is playing catch up at federal level, but also in the spheres of tech regulation, education, and frontline services. Nobody has been prepared for the explosion of deepfake porn abuse cases we saw in schools, especially around from 2023 to 2024, which again, as I imagine, has probably got worse since then. It's difficult to know though, because a lot of these incidents are often kept internal to schools, and oftentimes punishments are not even given at all. In schools, the ways of preventing these incidents occurring tend to fall back on pastoral and safeguarding processes, but never into the actual re-education of young boys. As I mentioned, even if this were being done, it feels like there's such a disconnect between adults and school children these days that effectively teaching them about gendered hate is almost futile. Realistically, their environment should have never taught them gendered hate in the first place to be required unteaching. But how do you prevent that when gender is so integral to our societies that, young boys are learning how to do this such severe form of hate at such a young age? And this is the same sort of idea that happens, as Laura Bates mentions these examples of women-only train carriages, rape alarms, anti-rape underwear. All we are dealing with is the same ways of reducing rape from the victim's perspective and never focusing on the fact that it shouldn't be happening in the first place. We shouldn't have to be on alert constantly. And like not able to post pictures online anymore. But digital crimes are overall even harder to police because oftentimes there is the anonymity related, and also again the fact that laws and policies just haven't caught up. But it's not to pretend like crimes of the internet are more effectively policed either. We all know the statistics around rape and the amount of men who will actually face jail time over these offences. And it's not a high percentage. As Bates writes, if rape has effectively been decriminalised in the real world, what possible hope is there of usefully policing digital crimes? I guess one way to start is just generally making it easier for women and girls to report these crimes in schools, more education about it, and mainly reporting it, and just making it less of a stressful, embarrassing procedure to report this sort of thing. I feel like for women as well, if you report it, you're kind of taking charge of finding all of the evidence, of explaining everything that happened, of proving that it actually happened to you. As Laura Bates writes, perhaps turn the tables and let the actual perpetrators spend hours of their time scrolling through their previous behavior and trying to find examples of proof of the fact that they didn't do this thing instead of the other way around. Make them prove that their behavior wasn't abusive and not have young women trying to prove that they were actually abused. Like, I think that makes a lot more sense, actually. Regardless, I literally have no solution for you. I feel like every episode I'm just talking about stuff and then I'm like, and that's it. And everything's bad. But the reason I still make these episodes is because like I feel like it's the most that I can do is to just like spread knowledge about things and make women angrier, women and men. Guys, I have like a 3% male listening percentage, so women and men actually. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I'm not even sure if you really learned anything new. This problem has just become so widespread and heavily talked about, at least the problem of generative AI. But yeah, I feel like it's just getting worse every day. And like, I don't know what we can really do about it except be equipped with the knowledge. And I also found that the techno-feminist framework to be really helpful in these times. Unrelated, but I didn't know about this website in Australia from the Australian government called Trove, where you can just Google like any book or article or newspaper or anything that's ever existed, and they'll basically just give it to you for free. So I'm ending this episode with a positive use of technology. It gave me access to Judy Weissman's book. It also tells you every library in any state where you can just go find it, whatever book you're after. Like, it's kind of goated. If you have any requests for other episodes, feel free to comment them below because my like episodes to be made list is running dry. Talk to you guys next time. Bye.